And information, tips, and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marsha has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Quartz, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marsha covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marsha Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so happy that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program. We are live out of Boca Raton, Florida, and this program is for you, the family caregiver, the unpaid family caregiver, because you can never get enough information, and this is a way to learn in the comfort of your own home, listen to it on the radio, in the car, on your own computer, pick it up on iHeartRadio, wherever you are. It's difficult for a caregiver sometimes to get up and get dressed and have someone to care for their loved one if they can't be left alone, in order to attend support groups or seminars or even get to a doctor's office. Is very difficult. So the show was created with you in mind, and we're so happy that we are in our fourth year and bringing all of this wonderful information to you from experts in the field, experts that are passionate about what they do and helping caregivers and dealing with dementia-related issues. So that being said, I'm just going to get right into my first guest today, because she's a repeat guest, and I'm so excited to have her back. Her name is Dr. Hovey Shroff, and she is with us today. Hi, Dr. Shroff.
Hi, Marsha. Thank you for having me again.
Again, I'm so excited that you are here. We had such a wonderful talk. I think it was maybe a couple years ago. You promised to come back, and you have. I want to let everybody know that Dr. Shroff is a licensed mental healthcare counselor. She specializes in helping people through disorders of memory, dementia, trauma, things like that, for a long time, right? How many years? Are we going to tell them?
I've been in the business almost 11 years.
11 years. And I can tell you that I spent some time with you. Many times we've been together. And Dr. Shroff is so kind and so passionate and so helpful. And now you're back with us, but this time you're back with something very new.
Yes.
And she wrote a book.
I did.
And this is exciting because this book came out just this year, right?
It did come out this year. Yes.
And it's called Will Grandpa Remember Me? A Children's Guide to Alzheimer's Disease. And I'm holding it up here for people that are watching us on the website, caregiversolutions.info. If you're listening, I just will tell you that it's a beautiful illustrated book, very colorful, attracted to children, obviously. And I briefly got to go through it. I can't wait. This is my autographed copy, so I'm so happy to have this, and thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
But this is very exciting, and I want to talk about this book because there really aren't that many books out on the market today that are geared toward children talking about Alzheimer's disease.
You're absolutely right. And actually, that was one of my main goals when I decided to write the book. I did some research, and I realized there wasn't much information geared towards the children. And I think that was my primary concern going into it.
Well, now there's many books for adults and many, many, many more are being written, but I think it's important to address the segment of the population because certainly children are affected by this disease,
yes.
right? They're part of a family,
Absolutely.
and the families that are dealing with dementia-related issues, obviously they can't escape it. And I want to talk about this book. So what inspired you to write a book geared toward children about Alzheimer's disease?
So, Marsha, like a lot of us out there, I have been personally affected by dementia. My mother-in-law, who actually was a retired physician, she was one of the smartest women I've ever known. She spoke 5 languages. She was an OBGYN. She was actually one of the first ladies to graduate from medical school in Hong Kong.
Wow.
Because she grew up in Hong Kong. She was born and brought up in Hong Kong. And what I'm actually saying is that Alzheimer's disease or dementia does not discriminate.
Mm-mm. Unfortunately, it does not.
And I saw how it affected her and what she became. We had her, and then a few years later, my dad also developed dementia. So it was almost like a family thing. But what I want to really point out is that we as a family were extremely lucky because my husband's a physician. And so we had resources, and we made it a point not to move mom or my dad into a facility. We wanted to make sure that their caregiving was done at home. Unfortunately, we had the resources. But what I found was that in the caregiving process, my children needed to be included in the caregiving process as well.
And were they young at this time?
They were young at the time when
About how old were they?
My younger son was probably maybe about 10 or 11 years old.
Wow, okay. So they're there with
Right.
all this going on in the
Right.
family, dealing with, the
Exactly.
mother-in-law, your dad.
Right.
They're seeing this, they're living it, they're part of it.
Exactly.
And so how did you see that it affected your children when you were caring for your parents?
Well, the books that I kind of got to basically talked about protecting the children, not including the children.
Is that right?
In the process.
Huh.
And I was of the opinion that I really wanted them to know what was really going on. So we took it upon ourselves, my husband and I, that we wanted to have the kids be involved in the caregiving process, because when we did that, it kind of builds resiliency for them as well as for us. And it's almost like a team effort, the caregiving process. So that's really what happened. And it kind of came more to light because, like I said, my dad got affected by the disease a few years down the road. So it was pretty recent. And so my boys were a whole lot older then. And they pretty much knew what to do by that time.
Yeah, they had experience
Right,
with
exactly.
it. And how long did it take you to write a book like this for children? Because I know
So-
that there's a lot that goes into it.
Right. So it's a labor of love, and this labor of love took 3 years in the making.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be just right, and
Right.
it's not easy to put this information into a book from the perspective of a child.
Right.
And certainly with your education and your background and having a doctorate degree in mental health, I'm sure
It did
it
help.
helped,
Yes.
but it's still not easy.
Right.
And I know this is something that's much needed. So in the book, it's adorable.
Thank you.
The colors, the characters are very adorable, relating, and it's relating to Grandpa.
It's relating to grandpa.
Right, and I like how Grandpa looks, and the little boy in here is part of the family. So tell me, in essence, what someone could learn from reading this book.
Okay. So obviously, it's a difficult topic, and like you said, I wanted to kind of make it simple, but at the same time, I wanted to be able to add exactly what's happening to the brain when somebody has Alzheimer's. And the book started out as I wanted to make it like a bridge, almost a bridge to help kids understand, because some of the stuff is difficult for a child to understand, but the way I envisioned it was that maybe an older person in the family, or mom or a dad, anybody could actually read the book to a child and explain what's happening. So the way I came up with the idea was I wanted to juxtapose a healthy brain, which was Jukes Brain, who is the young boy in the book who's actually relating the story, to Grandpa's brain that is getting old and has the disease.
So you're educating them not only about, that Grandpa has this disease, but you're relating to what is caused the disease
Exactly.
from, an elementary point of view,
Exactly.
so that a child could relate to it, so they understand what's a healthy brain and what's a not healthy brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also in the book, you talk about what a child can do to be part of the team,
Right.
because you mentioned earlier that it takes a team, and it is a team
Absolutely.
effort when a family is dealing with this. So what can a child do from different ages? Of course, are
Right.
going to be different things. So give us an idea of like a certain age, and
Okay.
take us up different ages of what different age children could do to help the major caregiver and be part of that caregiving team.
All right. So for I would say from about 9 years old to, let's say, about 12 years old, or even 8 to about 12 years old, the thing that I found in my experience that really works well is creating a treasure box. So it's almost like a memory box. So the child and the grandpa or the grandma, whoever's got the disease, would put items in the little treasure box that are of significance to the person who has the disease. So in my case, I could tell you that my dad loved collecting watches.
Ah,
So we always had a watch in the treasure box, and then the child could talk about the watch, and my dad would then talk about, oh, when did he get the watch? Who gave him the watch? Or
because he's remembering from
things.
a long time ago,
Right.
because he still has his
Exactly.
long-term memory. It's just
Exactly.
the short-term
Right.
memory that's
Exactly.
affected. So they can have a conversation.
Exactly. And things like music is great. We all know that music is wonderful.
Yes.
So usually when my dad would go through the sundowner's phase, we would always have music going on. And his favorite singer was Harry Belafonte. So we would have him listen to Harry Belafonte, and my kids would be involved in that. He loved music. So things like that 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 your loved one really loves. That's the kind of thing. And I think that kind of carries over. So even doing things like, so if the kids are older, like my oldest son had just started driving, so he would help take my dad for a car, drive in the car.
For a ride, just to change
things
of
like
scenery.
That, exactly. Things like that. Setting the table, folding clothes. My dad hated folding clothes, but you can do things like that, Just simple things that you involve the loved one and make them feel as independent as possible, and at the same time involve the children as well in the caregiving process.
I love this. And, even a younger child could help and say, Susie, can you take Grandpa the box of Kleenexes?
Right.
I mean, just little things to help.
Exactly.
And have them be around and be involved, and not isolate and
Exactly.
seclude them or exclude them from what's going on, because I guess it could be really scary for children.
It's extremely scary.
And were your children at first frightened, or how did you overcome that?
Yeah, because the question is that going to happen to me, Mommy? Am I going to get it? And our policy was never to lie, always be honest. And the honest answer was, I'm not sure. I don't really know. And I don't really know.
Right, and that's the honest answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because there is that piece, the stigmatization, the getting ostracized is because people think it's catchy and you're going to get it. So,
So you explained about it to
Right.
them to alleviate their fears.
Exactly.
And as much as they could understand at the time.
Right.
And so now you have the book, and there's something that you talk about in here called the magic sentences.
Yes.
Is that what it's called?
Yes.
What's a magic sentence, and why did you put it in the
All
book?
right. So when I work with, because that's my major practice, when I work with caregivers, I kind of teach them to focus on what their loved one has rather than what their loved one does not have. So we focus on the haves rather than the have-nots. And so when I talk about magic sentences, it's like making sure, it's almost like being positive, and that you're your loved one's rah-rah person, you're the person's best cheerleader. So, for instance, if your loved one does something, you make a really big deal about it and say, wow, Dad, that was awesome. If he says something, or, they say something like, I'm not quite sure, you can say, Dad, I would have done the exact same thing that you did.
You want to uplift them.
Exactly. And try to kind of be there for them, because the disease, the biggest thing that I've noticed with the disease is the lack of self-confidence, right? They're not sure.
In the person who has the disease?
Who has a disease.
And sometimes in the caregivers, too.
So I kind of akin the caregiver to a lighthouse. So a lighthouse is, when a sailor is lost at sea, the lighthouse is showing the sailor where to go.
Right.
So the caregiver technically is a lighthouse, because they're always, the person who has the disease is always going to look to the caregiver for reassurance.
And looking for that beacon.
Exactly. And so actually the cover of the book, if you notice, is actually a lighthouse.
Oh, it is. So it is, yes.
So that's basically the whole concept, that the caregiver and the caregiving family are like beacons, are like lighthouses to show our loved one the way.
Oh, how nice. I love it. So the magic sentences are really positive reinforcement for that person, what is going to make them feel good about themselves. Wow, I love that, the magic sentences. Well, this is an awesome book, and it is available, right, for purchase?
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon, so you can go. It's It's called Will Grandpa Remember Me by Dr. Hovey Shroff. You can go and buy it on Amazon. And I would definitely encourage you to do it if you have grandchildren that are maybe affected, or children, younger children, or if you have a neighbor or a friend that is also being a caregiver but yet has younger children. This is a great book to help explain what's going on with grandma or grandpa or great Aunt Sally or anybody. It's a wonderful educational tool, easy for a younger child to relate to. And I thank you for writing this.
Oh, thank you for having me explain about it.
Well, I love it, and thank you for my copy.
You're very welcome.
I'm gonna cherish that. So we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, Dr. Hovey Shroff has a lot more to share with us. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Quartz is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Quartz. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Quartz, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides. You are listening to your host, Marsha Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marsha. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Thanks for joining us today. Dr. Hovey Shroff is with us. We've been talking about her new book. This is very exciting. Will Grandpa Remember Me? Dr. Shroff wrote this book from personal experience and from experience working with caregivers and helping caregivers to understand how to teach younger children what's going on in a family affected by Alzheimer's and other related dementia. So you work with caregivers all the time. That's what you do. You're a licensed mental health counselor with your doctorate in that, and you've been doing this a long time, and I know you help a lot of people. I know you have some followers that this just love you, and I understand why. But you mentioned before we went to break something about the stigma. You mentioned that word stigma.
Right.
So let's talk about stigma related to Alzheimer's disease. What do you see?
Wow. If I had a magic wand, Marsha, that's the one thing I would like to correct, is the stigma. Because it's like the minute you say the A word or the D word, it's not I mean, it's not like the C word, because the C word, which is cancer, is curable. But dementia or Alzheimer's is not.
Yep.
And so everybody thinks as soon as we say that word, the A word, it's like, ooh, I'm going to get it. So I don't want to
They're afraid of that.
They're afraid. And it kind of conjures up all these images of, frustration, anger, depression, anxiety, and most of all based from fear, because they don't know how to deal with it. And so I always say, learn, educate yourselves, because that's the only way you can get rid of the stigma. I often, right now, I've been dealing with a lot of women who've had to place their loved one, their spouses, in a facility.
Now, before we go there, I want to get back to the stigma, because with the stigma of people being afraid, people lose connections because of the stigma. So before we get to that point, let's talk a little bit about the person who has dementia. They have a caregiver, they have a spouse who's a caregiver, and because of the stigma, because people are afraid, and because they don't understand it, what happens to their friends and even some of their extended family? What happens when this all comes to light?
Basically, they get ostracized. A lot of them get ostracized. I want to say over the years since I've been in this business, things are getting better. I am very hopeful. Families are rallying around, the caregiver a lot more. But there's still that stigma. There's still that ostracizing the person who has it.
And the reason they do that is because of their fear and of not being educated to understand what
is really going on and what they can really do to help the caregiver.
There you go.
Rather than not help the caregiver.
Right, because I know that people, given a chance to help, they would want to help.
Absolutely.
But once they're educated, no, this is not contagious, and no, you can't catch it. And a lot of people, though, that want to help, they're fearful because they don't understand the disease and they don't know how to relate to someone who has the disease, especially at later stages when it gets more difficult with language and maybe a lot of negative behaviors are going on with that person with dementia. So if you have a wife who is the caregiver and she's telling you in your office during a counseling session, she's explaining this to you, I've lost my friends because they don't understand, they don't get it, I miss them, but I don't know what to tell them or how to tell them what to do so they can help, so I don't lose them. What would you say to her, and how would you explain to her how her friends could get, I guess, educated or could help her in ways that they wouldn't be afraid?
Okay.
I know it's a big question.
I know.
But you got big answers. So.
Right. So the first thing I generally tell my caregivers is there's a lot of people out there. So you need to find people who think like you. So go find a support group that you can really talk about what's going on, because spouses and caregivers rally together. They really do. And
because they understand each other.
What's going on. And you will find a family member who is going to be supportive of you. So even if they don't understand the disease, you can still have them take you out for a cup of coffee and just get a break.
So they don't really, if they're not uncomfortable, if your friend is uncomfortable being around your husband because they don't know what to say or do, they don't really have to be around him in order to help you, the friend. And that's a really good point, because, the husband could stay with an aide or stay with someone, another family member, and you get to go out and still have your social time.
Exactly.
And that's how they can help. So it's not all or nothing.
Exactly. I mean, there are different ways that you can definitely help. Besides the support group, sometimes even just having somebody come to the house and just chit-chat with you, even though your loved one is in the house with you. I mean, that's respite, even if it's just for 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
It's more of a mental respite, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's not really physical because you're not leaving and going, but we all need a mental respite, too.
And it's also about knowing that there's somebody else in the house. It's not just you dealing with the disease alone.
There's comfort in
exactly,
numbers.
Exactly. There is comfort in numbers.
Yeah, very good point. So all of you out there that have friends that either have the disease or have a spouse who's the caregiver for someone, there are things you can do, and they would be very happy and grateful for you to do them, and not have to be more hands-on. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with the hands-on part of taking care of or relating to someone with dementia.
Exactly.
But I will tell you, if you do get to do it and you take some baby steps to understand what's going on, you get more comfortable with it as time goes by, and then you'll actually find joy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
Once you're over the fear, I think, and taking some baby steps to learn and to relate to a person with Alzheimer's, you'll find joy, because it's so interesting, and it's so different than anything you've ever done, and it's amazing that you can do something small. I mean, as small as a smile to somebody that has dementia, and you could light up their day just with a smile and a happy hello and a little chit chat.
I actually talk about that in my book.
Oh, you
and
do?
I talk about moments of joy. It doesn't have to be an extended amount of time, as long as the caregiver just gets even just a moment of joy to be with the caregiver, and that's respite, and it's almost like I have someone in my corner. I'm not doing this by myself.
Having a moment of joy is like getting a shot of B12.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, it injects your day with something that you can't buy. And you can't buy happiness, you can't buy this joy, but joy is available. You just have to look for it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to give away the 36-hour day book. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
Arden Quartz is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Quartz. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Quartz, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides. You are listening to your host, Marsha Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marsha. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor for this program, Arden Quartz Memory Care Community. Arden Quartz is a leader in memory care, and they not only help the person with the memory problem, but they help the caregivers and the families too. And one of the ways that they'd like to help you today, just for listening to this program, is they'd like to share and give you this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. Some people call it the Bible of Caregiving. It was one of the first books out for adults, for caregivers, relating to different kinds of dementia, giving tips and explanations and definitions. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers, and all you have to do to get it for free is call the toll-free number 888-478-2410. Tell them that you heard about the book on the Caregiver Solutions show, and they'll be glad to get your name and address and make sure that they mail a copy straight to you. So get this free book. It's a very, very good book. It's always being updated. I believe it's in its 5th or 6th revision now, so it's constantly being updated by Dr. Peter Rabins, The 36-Hour Day. So call 888-478-2410 and get your copy of The 36-Hour Day. And so my guest today is Dr. Hovey Shroff. She also wrote a book, and hers is for children, called Will Grandpa Remember Me? And Dr. Shroff is a counselor, a licensed mental health counselor, and wrote this book for children based upon not only her own experience, but experiences and that she's gained talking to other caregivers with dementia and about their issues with little children who you feel need to know what's going on.
Absolutely,
And so
yes.
that it alleviates the children's fear and makes them more involved. So I love the book. We've been talking about this wonderful book available on Amazon. Also, I want to talk about a little bit about the caregivers get through their days, right? I mean, their days are aptly named the 36-hour day because they put more into a day than most people in 24 hours. And they get overwhelmed and they get stressed out and they get to the end of their rope, right? And I know everybody, if they had their wish, they would like to keep their loved one with dementia at home. But it's not always possible. Sometimes they don't have the resources. Sometimes they don't have the patience. Sometimes there's not even a caregiver to care for them at home for various reasons, right? And sometimes it's better for the person with dementia to go into a memory care community for more help with their stimulation, their socialization, and they get more, right, than they could even get at home.
Right.
Because there's nurses there, there's caregivers around the clock. So sometimes it comes to that point. And I know that you help a lot of caregivers that are near that point or reaching that point or have gotten to that point.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about getting to that point. How do they reconcile in their own brain that it's time? And then after they make that decision, which is a difficult decision
Extremely
to make,
difficult.
and we want to talk about what happens next. But let's talk about making that decision and how tough it is for caregivers and how you counsel them through that.
Okay. So the question that I always get asked is, when will I know that it's the right time?
That's a very popular question.
Right. And my answer is very simple. You will know.
That's it? You will
That's
know?
it. You will know. And then I kind of, elaborate on that and I say, safety first. So it's really important that you are safe as well as the person with dementia is safe in the house. That always comes first. That tops everything. If you feel that you cannot provide safety in the home for your loved one, then that would be definitely a box that you would have to check off to make sure that maybe there's another facility or a memory care center that could provide that safety.
So that's a red flag right there.
Absolutely.
That means you're ready.
Right, you're
Okay.
ready.
What
And,
else?
The other thing is also a lot of people come to me and they say, I can't do it because I'm going to feel really guilty.
Yes. That's another big one.
That's a really big thing. The other thing is shame. Why am I doing this? I married this person. I said I would go, be with this person through everything, and now I've come to this point. But it's also, the statistics show, Marsha, that the caregiver usually, I think it's over 40% that the caregiver sometimes passes before the person who has dementia.
Or at least ends up in the hospital from
Exactly.
and it's stress that
Exactly.
causes that, right?
And I always tell my caregivers that if you are so incapable of taking care of yourself, how can you possibly take care of your loved one?
True.
And when you come to that point, that's when you know that it's time.
So this is comforting for caregivers to sort of have a gauge
Right.
to say, okay, am I there yet? Because they're so involved in the process. I think sometimes they don't stop long enough to look at the whole situation and be able to look at it objectively.
Absolutely. And like you said, they're so involved that it's almost like go, go, go 24/7, that they're really not taking time to take care of themselves. And I've had so many of my patients who've landed up in the hospital because they themselves are so overworked, and self-care is kind of out the window. They're really not taking care of themselves.
And of the ones that landed in the hospital, was that a breaking point for them, knowing
Yes.
that, okay, now I know what I really have to
Right.
do and get some help?
Right. Absolutely. And it's always a difficult decision, but I think it's almost sometimes a relief, but not a relief as in placing them, but a relief that there's somebody else better than them who can take care of their loved one.
Yeah. And if they can come to that realization,
Right.
that's going to help with that guilt, right?
Right.
And that shame,
Absolutely.
because they're actually doing something for their loved one, not to their loved one. And
Right.
I always say, if you change one little word from 2 to 4, it
Right.
changes the whole meaning of helping somebody, because you're not placing them in a community. You're not doing something to them. You're giving them, right?
What's best for them,
What's
yes.
best for them. It's an opportunity.
Right.
And it really is an opportunity for both the caregiver and the person with dementia, because they both benefit from it. So that being said, okay, let's say that you have a caregiver who has come to that realization, and she knows that she must put her husband in a memory care community. She's checked the boxes.
Right.
She's talked with you. It's definitely the right time for her.
Right.
And now she has, right? Now she goes back home. And then what happens? What's next for her? How does somebody go through the feelings of doing this, because now they've actually done it, but then how do they get on with the rest of their life? And I know that's a big part of what you talk to caregivers about.
Right. So it's a great question, Marsha. I get asked that all the time. So the words that I like to use is I kind of help them get used to their new normal.
A new normal.
A new normal.
Interesting.
So their new normal is they are still married, they still have spouses, their spouses don't live at home anymore, and they are lonely. I mean, they've always been lonely through the caregiving process, but now it's like reality. There is nobody at home.
Well, not only are they lonely, but they are physically alone. So
yes.
they're alone and lonely.
Yes.
Yeah, and they realize this because it's different when, even if someone's not really engaging with you all the time,
Right.
having that body there,
Exactly.
it's just some form
It's
of
comfort.
Yes,
It's
it is.
comforting.
Even if they
Right.
aren't relating to you the way they used to, but
Exactly.
but now they're alone, and that's probably a scary feeling too.
Right. And it's also, even though they were making decisions while their loved one, was in the throes of the disease, they were still at home. But now it's almost a reality that, okay, every single decision lies on me. So it's like a game changer, because now it's the realization that I really am all by myself and I have to take care of everything all by myself.
Yeah, the house, the
finances, I mean, everything.
and the decisions at the community, because even if you put you have a loved one that you place in a memory care, you're still making decisions.
Exactly.
You're still the decision maker.
Exactly.
You still have to decide about medical treatments. You have to decide about, can he go on an outing? You have to decide,
I mean, simple things like, how often should I go? Be with my loved one.
right. And they struggle with that
Right,
too.
exactly.
Wow, so it's a big deal.
It is a really big
So
deal.
let's walk through some of these issues and see if we can help some of our viewers if they're going through the same thing.
Okay, so usually, right now I've just had a lady who's placed her spouse in a memory care center recently, and she is going through all the stages of grief. We go through the depression, we're going through the anxiety, we're going through all the stages of loss. We go through everything, the anger, like, why did I do this? We second guess ourselves.
And that's rough when you
Exactly.
second guess yourself. You
Right.
beat yourself up.
Exactly. And we, as you know, are our worst critic. I mean, we can never forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we've made. However, if we have a friend, and this is what I tell my caregivers, if you had a best friend and he or she was going through the same thing that you were going through, you'd be the first one to say, hey, Mary, you did the best that you can. Don't be so hard on yourself. But when it comes to us, we are not kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
And we kind of lack that self-compassion. So I actually train them in self-compassion and being kind to yourself and not second-guessing yourself and knowing that you did what was best for your loved one and for you in the moment.
And they might realize that for the moment and they get it.
Right.
But I don't think it has staying power right away, right?
It doesn't,
It's
no.
a process.
It is a
and it's not
process.
something that they're just going to, okay, I got it.
Right.
And I'm good with it, because with time
Right.
and they're thinking a lot, they have more free time because they're not the caregiver now 24/7. They start, like you said,
Right.
second guessing or what if, and doing the what ifs. Yeah.
And so actually, I think that was a really good point that you made. And I've noticed that it really comes to light and they start believing in it when they do visit their loved one and they see their loved ones happy, engaged,
Yeah.
and they get that moment of joy.
That's what
to
they're
see.
ultimately looking
Exactly.
for. That's going to make
And-
them know,
right.
oh, look at, he's happy. I'm
Right.
happy.
And so, I mean, I always stress it's about the quality of life, not only for you as the caregiver, but also for your loved one. You know, and if you can provide that and know that, I think we're good.
Yeah, it's a process.
It is a process.
And thank goodness there's people like you that can hold literally and figuratively, I'm sure, both, someone's hand
Absolutely.
and guide them through this difficult time, because it's not easy.
No, it's not.
So back to a question that you brought up. A lot of people say, how often should I visit my loved one? What do you say to that?
As often as you want.
As long as it makes
It's
you happy and your loved one happy?
Exactly. And sometimes they say, it's too painful. I can't go so often.
Right.
I say, okay, so
Don't-
live in the moment. If one day you feel like you can't, maybe tomorrow when you wake up, you will. So see how you feel in the moment and take it one day at a time.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's the best advice,
Right.
because they shouldn't kind of pin themselves down to a specific schedule,
Right.
right? And I always say, it's not really good for their loved one to actually have a schedule that they know that their
They're gonna come.
caregiver are going to come, because
Right.
sometimes if the person who's in the memory care, right, and if they have enough wherewithal to know, okay, my wife is coming, or
It's
she's
lunchtime,
supposed to come,
yeah.
it's lunchtime, she's supposed to come
Right.
today. Well, what if the wife gets hung up, or
Right.
she has a flat tire, or she has a doctor's appointment or something,
Right.
and all of a sudden now her husband is sitting there not wanting to eat,
Right.
because oh no, my wife is
It's gonna
coming.
come.
And no matter what you say, he's already gotten conditioned to expect
Exactly.
her at lunch every day.
Right.
So I always tell the caregivers, mix it up.
Right.
Don't set a precedence, because they're going to be better off for that. And so will you, because I think sometimes when they have schedules, I must get there. Oh my
Right.
gosh, I got to run. I got to quit. I got to leave my beauty
Right.
appointment because I got to go,
Yeah.
it's noon.
Right.
That's giving caregivers more stress.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And it's putting, undue anxiety, I think, on the person in the memory care
Exactly.
who sits there waiting for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I like your advice. Just one day at a time. Don't make it a schedule. What about families who live, let's say, adult children whose parents live down here in South Florida in a memory care, but the adult children who may also be the durable power of attorney, the responsible party, and they live up north. Do you ever deal with adult children from far away, and how can you help them, or what do they need?
Great question. Yes, and I do deal with adult children who live up north or wherever they live. And I am most times in touch with the children as well, the adult children as well. And I do that not so much for the parent who's in the memory care center, but for the parent who is the caregiver. Because I really think it's important that the caregiver feels that they are supported by their children. So I often encourage the children to send little text messages, because that's the way kids communicate these days. So it doesn't have to be a long email or "Mom, how are you doing?" or "What are you doing?" Just sometimes just sending in a little heart emoji and so that the mom knows, okay, I have my people are here for me.
Yeah,
And it really changes their day.
yeah, that's a good point, because sometimes the spouse who's well and dealing with this because their children all are working and maybe not living locally, they feel better when they have that support.
Exactly.
They want to know that, hey, we love you too, and you're doing the best job you can do.
And also around holidays. and important milestones. I always encourage the adult children to definitely somehow make sure that the spouse who's at home, the parent who's at home, has some sort of support, has somewhere to go to for the holidays if they can't come down for the holidays. And I also always actually encourage the adult children to make sure that they remember the caregiver parent's birthday, anniversaries, things like that.
We always like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously the person, the loved one who's in the memory care cannot do that.
Right. Won't remember.
So I always make it a point that they do that for their parent who's at home.
Those are great tips. Really
Right.
good. We're going to take our last break, but don't go away. More from Dr. Hovey Shroff when we come back. We'll be right back.
Arden Quartz is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Quartz. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Quartz, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Quartz provides. You are listening to your host, Marsha Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marsha. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my guest, Dr. Hovey Shroff, is here. She's a licensed mental health counselor, author, all-around general good person, and helps a lot of caregivers through all the issues that caregivers deal with. So before we have to end today, unfortunately, the time goes by so fast, I want to talk about something that I know that you talk to your caregivers about. After they've placed their loved one in a memory care, right, and they go through all those emotions, there comes a time when they don't want to be alone anymore.
Right.
So do they struggle with being married but yet wanting to maybe have a companion? And what do they say and what do you tell
Right.
them?
So oftentimes, yes, there's that struggle. Do I want to be part of just a women's group and just gravitate towards women things and do solo activities? But oftentimes, a lot of the women especially would like to have a male companion, but they're always ridden with guilt. They feel like,
Because
how
they're
can I do
married.
that? Exactly.
Yeah.
Because technically, they're not widows or widowers. However, I have to say, the men seem to fare a whole lot better than the women do.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you don't or can't go somewhere alone, and you really
Exactly.
need a date or a
Right.
companion to go to do something with, and it makes it more fun and enjoyable.
Right.
So, but yet they feel guilty, and is it wrong? And what do you tell them?
I always tell them, do what makes you feel comfortable. If you're comfortable doing it, because everybody's so afraid of what Susie's going to say or what Mary Jo is going to say.
All the
And
gossip.
Exactly. And my kind of counseling is do what makes you feel comfortable in the moment.
And I noticed you said comfortable and not happy.
Yeah.
And there's a difference.
There is a difference. Comfortable is, are you comfortable with what you're doing? If the guilt is still there, then you're not comfortable.
Because you could be not comfortable but happy,
Right.
and maybe that's not the right way to look at it.
I mean, happy is kind of relative, right? Your happy is different from my happy. But when you're comfortable, you're okay.
You're in your space.
In your space. And that's how I kind of use the word, and I kind of explain it to them. Oftentimes, even when the spouses are placed in a memory care center, they make friends
That's true.
and they have companions. And so sometimes when that happens, the spouses who are left at home say, okay, now I don't feel so bad because my husband or my wife has a friend at the memory care center. So there are different things that, kind of materialize, so to speak. And I always say it's about being in the moment. It's not about what happened in the past, and it's not about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's about what's happening right now for you and how you are able to deal with what's happening with you right now in the moment.
Yeah, and don't worry about what other people are going to say, because they're not walking in your shoes.
Exactly.
They aren't in your space.
Exactly.
They don't know what you're going through. Because every caregiver is different, every person with dementia is different, and every situation is different. So I like that. I thank you for explaining that and helping everyone. We're talking about her book too today. I think now that you've written this children's book, I think you should probably go on to the next phase and to write one for adult children or for spouses, because
it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. So this book is written by Dr. Hovey Shroff, Will Grandpa Remember Me? It's a wonderful book. Just came out, and you can get it at Amazon.com under their books, and order it and have it at your house. If someone is listening and watching today and you do have a practice here in South Florida. Matter of fact, it's actually called South Florida Counseling Associates. And if they would like to contact you and maybe go further in discussions, can they do that?
Absolutely.
And tell them how to do that.
So you can contact me via email, and my email is drhoveyshroff@gmail.com, or you can just simply call me at 561-800-2527.
Okay. And you have a website?
I do.
And
it's www.drhovey.com. Very simple.
Okay. And the doctor is just DR, not spelled out.
Correct. So it's just drhovi.com.
I encourage you all to contact Dr. Hovey Shroff, because she's amazing. She does great work here in South Florida with caregivers, and she has written this wonderful book, and I just can't say enough to thank you for coming on to the show today. Let's talk, before we leave, we have a few more minutes left. Let's talk about what caregivers need to know at the end stages when their loved one, maybe they're on hospice, or maybe they've just passed. What do they go through, and is there any advice for them?
Okay. So usually, obviously, I mean, I'm walking this journey from start to finish most times with a lot of my caregivers. So a lot of my caregivers have been with me 5-10 years, and
so you've been with them from the beginning until their loved one has passed.
Has passed. And all through the process, I've been holding their hand literally and figuratively, helping them make decisions such as end-of-life decisions.
Yes.
So making sure that they have all their paperwork in order, making sure the funeral arrangements are in order, making sure they know who to contact, what needs to happen as soon as their loved one passes. So all this is hopefully taken care of before their loved one actually passes. And once their loved one actually passes, they continue to come see me, because they once again now going through the stages of loss and grief for real. So they are going to go through all those stages again. So walking them through all those stages that they're going through.
It's a second loss.
It is a second loss, and this time it's like real. It's the reality finally hits them, and to a lot of them actually themselves go through a really big depression, a deep depression, because it's like, okay, now reality has really hit me. So actually, I always tell all my caregivers, even if you don't want to come back to me, definitely seek out support groups. Definitely make sure that you're going through to a bereavement group to get that support that you need, because it's very, very, very important.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because caregivers really go through two losses. One, when they get the diagnosis and they are losing that person every day, and then the finality of it when the person actually passes away. And interesting that they go through the same emotions all over again.
Yes,
and they need that support. It's very, very difficult. So I hope that you all enjoyed Dr. Hovey Shroff today. I know I certainly did. It's just always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
I want you to come back again.
I will, for
Maybe you'll have
sure.
another book by then. I don't know. But I appreciate you and appreciate all that you do. And we appreciate you, too, the caregiver, for watching the show and sharing it with family and friends that might need some extra education and some help on their caregiving journey. So feel free to pass it along, share it on social media. Don't forget to go on Amazon.com and get a copy of Will Grandpa Remember Me. It's a really cute, easy read book. Also, don't forget to call the 800 or the toll-free number, 888-478-2410. Get your free copy of the 36-Hour Day book. It's a wonderful book. You need to have it on your shelf so you can refer to it when a situation comes up. And most of all, don't forget, we'll be back same time, same place next Tuesday, 5 to 6 p.m. live here in Boca Raton. In the meantime, don't forget and give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marsha Teele. Join us next week as Marsha, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were